Story 1. This story was submitted by a subscriber. The first part is that according to Algonquin and Mi'kmaq legends, Wendigos are native to forests of Nova Scotia. They're said specifically to frequent forests in this region. I'm from Nova Scotia, Canada, and there's this access road that my boyfriend and our friends go down to have fires. There's a fork in the road about 300 meters down the trail, and you have to choose to veer off in either direction. Now, every time we veer off to the left, nothing weird ever happens. We have a regular night. But every time we veer off to the right, weird shit happens. We see eyes glinting at us in the dark just outside of the light from our fire. Eyes that are slightly higher than a normal human's height. We constantly feel like we're being watched. We'll also often hear animals in the woods go silent, normally right before we feel this presence that makes us decide to pack up and leave. I have a few stories that I can share about weird events from the right side of the trail. 3 years ago, my boyfriend and some of his friends were out in the woods during the day. They decided to go to the right side of the trail and off the beaten track into the woods. They hadn't taken more than 3 steps off the path when they nearly collided with a pile of bones. Now, these weren't just any bones. They were neatly stacked, sun-bleached animal bones that were in a nice little pile as if they'd been arranged there. 2 years ago, my boyfriend and his friends were having a fire out in the woods. One of the girls went off into the woods to pee alone. Her boyfriend heard what sounded like her crying out for help, so everyone got up to rush over to her. When they got to her, she was confused since she hadn't said anything or called out to them, but she did say she felt like she was being watched. 3. Our friend went out to the access road at night by himself. He parked his car at the fork in the road with the headlights pointed towards the right side of the trail. He got out to smoke, leaning against the side of his car. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw what looked like the light glinting off a pair of eyes. When he turned to look, they'd vanished, but he heard shuffling noises. He got back to the car and ripped out of there. 4. 2 weeks ago, we were coming out of the woods. We'd come from the left side of the fork after having a nice night sitting around the fire. I was sitting in my friend's passenger seat with the window rolled down. As we were leaving, the song Thriller by Michael Jackson came on, and I made a joke about how it would be the perfect time for me to finally see the Wendigo. At that exact moment, I saw this humanoid figure standing maybe 10 feet off the track right next to my window. We whipped by it, and I remember feeling this absolutely cold-to-the-bone feeling wash over me. When we got back to my boyfriend's house, I asked him to describe the Wendigo to me. He had been in the car following behind us, so he wouldn't have been in the car with me when I saw it. As he described what the Wendigo normally looks like, I honest to God felt my soul leave my body because it was an exact description of what I'd seen. Keep in mind, he's never told me what the Wendigo looks like, and I was 100% sober, so it wasn't like it was a case of my overactive imagination. For the record, it looks like this vaguely humanoid shape, but it's hunched, as if its arms are too heavy for its body. It's kind of hunched forward, its arms trailing down towards the ground, and appears from a distance to be a kind of dark beige in colour, although that's just in the dark. And it's big. Like, tall. Before I continue to the next story, I just want to say thank you for choosing to watch this video. If you're enjoying my narration, please go ahead and hit the like button, and if you don't already, subscribe to my channel. It really helps me out. These next stories are from Reddit. Story 2 by Reddit user Ruse85. The winter season was upon us, and droves of Wendigo spotters had descended upon our small town to try and get a glimpse of something that I believed didn't exist. It all started 2 years back when Billy Fisher brutally murdered his wife Jane and her 2 poor daughters. When he was arrested, he claimed in his defense that he was driven mad by some kind of beast that followed him home from the lake he was fishing on one night. It affected me and my wife greatly. We were neighbours. We had no kids of our own, so we looked after the girls whenever we could. We loved those 2 girls. We were close friends, and when he came and asked me for help, I honestly thought he was crazy. I wish I had listened to him, and ever since the town has been besieged by conspiracy theorists looking to get sight of something that apparently doesn't exist. I was sitting down in the living room watching telly when I heard my wife scream from the kitchen. I ran in to find that she had dropped the meatloaf all over the floor. Concerned, I asked her what happened. She seemed terrified. She told me she had seen something staring through the kitchen window at her. It had big red eyes, she said. I tried to reassure her that it was probably one of those Wendigo spotters trying to get a picture of one of us locals. They had been known to do that. They come up here and think it's fair game to harass us and trespass on our land. After my wife calmed down, we decided to go to bed. I made sure all the windows and doors were shut tight. That night, as I tossed and turned, I awoke to find my wife missing from the bed. I could see my breath and the air was brisk. Someone had opened the bedroom window. I went to close it, and that's when I saw my wife standing in the back garden staring into the woods. I called her name, to no reply. I ran down the stairs, but all the windows and doors were still shut and the keys were still in the drawer where I had left them. Even though I had my housecoat on, it was still cold as anything. It must have been below freezing and my wife was just standing there in her nightgown. I called her name and she didn't even acknowledge me. I shouted at her and shook her till she came round, and eventually I got her back in the house and back to bed. The next morning she remembered nothing. At first, she didn't believe me. She thought I must have dreamt it. That was until I showed her the mud on the nightgown. I didn't blame her for being perplexed about the whole situation. It was totally out of character for her. Apart from chasing out a few out-of-towners from my land, it was an uneventful evening. That night, before we went to bed, I made sure everything was double-locked, and I hid the keys. Horrible nightmares filled my mind as I slept. I dreamt of a monstrous creature that stalked the woods behind my house. The creature walked upright, like a human, but it wasn't a human. Its legs were similar to that of a goat, but big and strong. It had massive talons for hands. It had leathery, jet-black skin with deep red scars covering his torso. Its head looked like a skinned goat's head. Its eyes glowed red and big towering antlers sprung from his back. As it stalked me through the woods, I could hear it calling me, but it sounded like my wife. I turned to see my wife standing there. As I walked towards her, she transformed into the beast. That's when I woke up. My wife wasn't in bed with me. The sheets were covered in blood. I felt searing pain all over my chest. I looked down and saw a load of deep claw marks dug into me. I heard a growl come from the corner. I looked to find my wife cowering. She was shaking while licking my blood off her fingers. She seemed delirious. She screamed at me not to come near her. She was hungry, was all she kept on saying. Eventually, I calmed her down. Her temperature was through the roof, so I decided to call a doctor. When the doctor got here, I brought him up to my bedroom to my wife. I left them alone there while I went downstairs to make coffee. As the coffee brewed, I heard a gut-wrenching scream come from the bedroom. Then, the doctor came sprinting down the stairs screaming that she had bit him, as he ran out the door, not even looking back. I sat with my wife and watched over her as she tossed and turned all night. She rambled on for hours about the woods and how hungry she was. Eventually, I drifted off to sleep. When I woke the following morning, my wife was gone. After frantically searching the house, I found no sign of her, except for a note that was left on the kitchen table. The only words on the note were, "I love you." A few days after I reported my wife missing, the police called me into the station and showed me security footage that was taken the night before. 2 bodies had been found near the woods, badly mutilated, and my wife was caught on camera walking from the scene near the woods. I know my wife is out there somewhere in the woods, maybe. I have seen the form she takes from time to time. Now, I spend my days searching for a way to bring her home. Story 3. This story comes in 2 parts and is by the Reddit user Foxiana123. Recently, a few months ago, I moved into a new house in the mountains. It's almost always cold and I'm surrounded by woods. But I like it, as it's easier to do my job in isolation with little distractions. I sell paintings, and I'm paid a small monthly check to write poems for a magazine that is both online and physical. The new surroundings have given me all sorts of inspiration for both writing and painting. The strange occurrences started about a week into me living here. More and more frequently, I'd find dead animals nearby. Not really gored or anything, just dead. Rabbits, birds, and the occasional fox. It freaked me out, but I just assumed a predator of sorts was showing off because they felt threatened by me. I decided to always carry around a gun and a taser, just to be safe. I also decided to call an expert of the mountains and asked him to visit. When he came, he seemed worried. Now this man was a fairly old Native American who had lived on these mountains for about his whole life, so this concerned me, knowing he knew just about everything on this mountain. He sat me down and told me a tale of a dark creature, born of hunger and cold, a Wendigo. I was skeptical. This was a creature of fiction. At least, I thought it was. He left with a stern warning to never stray far from home without good reason, and never follow the voices of the forest, as it may be a Wendigo luring me to their feeding grounds. I spent the next few days watching the woods closely. Maybe if I got a glimpse of whatever it was in the woods, my mind would be put at ease. At first, I saw nothing. Then I saw swift movement among the underbush and trees. It wasn't until around the 5th day of watching I saw something clearly. Something standing upright, with deer-like legs, staring at me with pale eyes. I quickly went inside, suddenly feeling chilled to the bone. It took a bit and some self-pumping up before I could go back outside to do my painting and woodwatching. I found myself putting what I could see of the creature in my paintings, but I could never catch the coldness of its eyes quite right. It fascinated and terrified me greatly, but I couldn't stop. The creature got braver, showing a bit more as time passed. I could now confirm it had a large set of antlers and its front limbs were not hooves like its back legs, but claws. I knew then that it was likely a Wendigo, one that decided to watch me, although I didn't dare attempt to approach it, knowing its curious nature might be as deceiving as a wolf's smile. Although I never verbally called it this name, I subconsciously named it Branch. It seemed suiting. He started, or I think it was him, pushing over items on my porch like empty paint pots and small decorations, going back to the tree line by the time I got outside. It didn't really bother me as nothing got damaged. Kind of reminded me of a cat, actually. I began speaking to it, not expecting responses. While I painted, I would just ramble out loud, knowing he was just at the trees. I don't know if he listened, but I think he did. His ears would face towards me the whole time. Those long, slightly disproportionate ears. One day, he appeared with scars, a few still bleeding. This concerned me, but I couldn't get close to him. He was an injured animal, and would even more likely attack me if I got close. After a few days, they healed to pale marks on his skin. And this happened a few times, but I learned to ignore it. This routine went on for a good while. I watched him, he watched me, but we kept our distance. But that changed yesterday. He approached me, and I didn't even notice till I saw his shadow. I looked up and saw shaggy black fur that smelled like rotting meat. I could see his cold, empty eyes so clearly now. They were genuinely curious, but hungry. I didn't even move. I froze up. I didn't even shiver. After what seemed like an eternity, he turned and headed towards the trees. I didn't dare move until he disappeared among the trees. I went inside and called the man that warned me of them. He agreed to come and pick me up when he could. I'm waiting for the man to get here. Branch is staring at me through the window. Part 2. Excuse me for the wait. I couldn't find much time to write after I posted. A few hours after, the man pulled in the front, which, unlucky for me, was where Branch was. I got the meat chop I had pulled out earlier and stepped outside. Branch was staring through the window. When he turned to look at me, I made sure to look at his chest fur rather than his eyes. Soulless, cold eyes. I threw the meat. He ignored it. Didn't even twitch. I started to slowly move towards the man's truck. Branch's eyes tracking me. As I moved off the porch, he started to follow me, his hooves making heavy footfall on the wood. His eyes never left me. As I slowly made my way to the car, he slowly followed, staying 3 feet away. No more, no less. When I finally made it in the car, he was still staring, with those cold, empty eyes. The man slowly pulled out and started down the long mountain trail. He started muttering about how I shouldn't have let it get this far, as well as other colourful words and terms. Right now, I'm at his cottage at the base of the mountain. I'm still shaken, and I don't know if I want to risk going back. His wife is lovely and treats me well, as far as guests go, but I know I'll have to leave soon. The man explained that the Wendigo was one well known on the mountain, known for only attacking young females, always leaving the head intact. Now this is only semi-relevant, as I am a man, but he can't explain why he's taken a sudden interest in me. Maybe he's contemplating eating me. In a few hours, he's taken me back. He's given me food, a gun, several rounds, and a blowtorch. I got home an hour ago. Branch wasn't there, but my porch looked like a tornado passed, and I think they're by my doorstep. I quickly went inside and locked the doors and windows. I don't think he knows I'm back yet, and frankly, I don't want him to know. It's been a few hours and there's no sign of him. I don't want to go outside to tidy up my porch, I'm too scared to. It's hard to swallow the sandwich I made because of the tension I'm feeling, but I have to eat. I think I'm going to take a nap after I finish it. He's here. He's staring into the windows and making distorted huffs and brays, occasionally stamping his hooves on the porch. He can't see me right now because I'm behind the couch. He sounds angry. He started banging his antlers on the glass. He's trying to break it. It's starting to crack. The glass shattered. My heart is pounding. My ears are ringing. I can smell the rotten meat he reeks of. He crawled in through the window. I think he can smell me. He started knocking over random things, but I'm frozen. I can't bring myself to peek. I might try and make a run for it, or I'll have to wait it out. He just went down the hall. I'm going to go out the front and run. I don't know how far I ran, but the sun went down by the time I stopped, and the temp is definitely below freezing. Luckily, I was already wearing a heavy coat, and I found a small overhang. I'll rest. Hopefully, he doesn't find me. I woke up, but it's still dark out. It's only 12. I slept 3 hours. I'm shivering like crazy, but the overhang helps a little, blocking the wind. The forest seems still. Nothing is stirring. Not even the owls are hooting. I'm going back to sleep. Hopefully it's lights out when I wake up this time. I woke up an hour or so ago and started walking towards the base of the mountain. My limbs feel numb, but the movement has helped. The forest is still eerily quiet, and I keep finding blood puddles and tufts of fur. I think Branch threw a massive tantrum. I need to find a house with people in it. Safety in numbers. I didn't bring the gun. I know I'm stupid, but I just wanted away from him. I started running again. I heard what sounded like hooves, and I swear I smelled rotting flesh again. If he catches me on his turf, I'm honestly fair game to kill, even if I'm not his preferred food. I found a field of corpses. Deer, bears, rabbits, wolves, birds. Dead animals everywhere. I quickly went around it, holding my breath, trying not to puke. I guess that's why the forest was so quiet. He killed all the animals at a fit, like a violent child throwing a tantrum. A child that could easily rip out my throat and cave in my ribcage and skull. I'm seriously hoping he isn't following me. I can see houses. I think I found one of those retreats for monks or whatever who take vows of silence. I'm going to see if they can help me. So, good news. They happily let me into a living area where I could warm up and provided food and a warm drink. I think it's just milk. They contacted someone and wrote me a note saying that someone would be coming for me to take me off the mountain. A few of them decided to be curious, so I explained what happened. Some of them wrote me off, but others gave me scared, shocked looks. They've taken me to a bedroom and communicated that I can sleep until the person coming to get me actually gets there. When he does, I'm not going back. My things can stay there, as can Branch. I'll find somewhere else to live, like an apartment in a city, with people. I was able to sleep for a few hours before the guy came. I told him just to take me to the nearest town. I'm outside a motel right now, slowly making calls and arrangements. I'm never going back to that place, with that thing. Ever. Story 4. By Reddit user Slumber Reads. Slumber Reads also has a YouTube channel of the same name. Stories of skinwalkers, Bigfoot, and many other mythical beings seem to be a hot topic when it comes to scary stories. There seems to be tales to share no matter where in the United States you reside in. I live in northern Minnesota. Although we have some myths such as the Iceman, the Mystery Monster, and even Wendigos, I've always chalked those up to nothing more than stories. I mean, why would you believe otherwise? I didn't even believe in ghosts. I thought it was all a bunch of mumbo-jumbo made up to keep people on their toes. Perhaps just ancient tales to keep people from trespassing or making bad decisions such as camping alone. I've always lived a rather careful and isolated lifestyle anyway, so what stock did I really have to put into any of these tales? The story I'm about to tell you is going to sound crazy. I'm going to try and explain it to the best of my recollection, even though adrenaline leaves more minor details in a bit of a haze. You see, I'm having a hard time digesting that something like what I encountered exists, because this leaves all other possibilities on the table. Skinwalkers, Bigfoot, everything. They may be real as well, and that thought terrifies me. As I said, I live a very isolated life. This means I don't even know my own back roads very well, if at all. So when the main road was closed whilst I went to pick up my brother from the bar in the city 20 miles away, I silently chewed myself out for not bringing a GPS. I do, however, have a general sense of direction and figured if I just headed south and went back a little to the west, roughly 20 miles in, I could figure it out. I won't bore you with directions. The important part is, as I mentioned, I would have to take foreign roads back. Let me start from the beginning of the night and tell you some more about myself to add some more context. I was a 19-year-old shut-in. I spent most of my nights playing video games and feeding my caffeine cravings. I did have a part-time job working at a farm a few miles down the road. The pay wasn't great, but it did pay for new games when I wanted one, and other miscellaneous things. I was in that in-between spot in my life where I knew I was an adult, but trying to find out what I wanted to do with my life was a daunting mystery. My skill sets were, and are, far and few between, and living in the middle of nowhere, opportunities were at a minimum. One late June night, I was up playing video games, as I normally do. I think the game was Destiny, though it doesn't matter. It was roughly 12:30 a.m. when I got a text from my brother asking me to come and pick him up from the bar. Keep in mind, the bar closes at 1 a.m. He informed me he had no other ride, and I was his only option. It was just like him to pin something like this on me last minute. I wanted to chew him out for going out drinking all the time, but I felt it wouldn't help the situation currently at hand. Instead, I told him I'd be there ASAP and to not venture off. He has ventured off in the past, leaving me to look for him on the streets, since he's awful at replying to texts. I slammed the rest of my can of Mountain Dew, grabbed the keys to my shitty 2002 Corolla, and headed out right away. About a mile in is where I made the realization that the main road was closed, so I took a second to think, threw on my blinker, and took the gravel road closest to it. If memory served me right, I thought I remembered this being a straight shot with maybe one turn at the end. Not a big deal, right? Of course not. If I made it in time, it really doesn't matter what route I take. A couple of miles into the road, I was really starting to like the scene of my environment. The area I live in is fairly forested, but the trees here just seem denser somehow. The road was as dark as it could possibly get, and it made me feel like I was in a horror movie, which brings me to where things started to get strange. About 10 miles down the road, I started swearing the shadows weren't coordinating with my headlights properly. It's tough to explain, but it's like they were going outwards up top and inwards on the ground in front. Now, I'm no expert when it comes to how shadows should react, but it was one of those gut feelings that something about this wasn't right. Before I knew it, I came to the end of the road, and there was a T-section, and I promptly took a right. 1 mile down that road, and it brought me directly to the city. Simple enough. I had a moment of self-celebration as I was proud of myself for figuring it out first try. I knew the city fairly well. Well, I say city, but it really only has a population of 15,000 people. Around here, though, that is a city. I got to the bar and found my brother just coming out with a few of his buddies. Perfect timing as well. I pulled in, hitting the curb as I did so, making it sound like my car was going to fall to pieces. It grabbed the attention of my brother and his friends, and they all started laughing as my brother waved them goodbye and made a light jog to my car. He hopped in, I backed out, and we were back on our way to the secluded road. We made some conversation as I drove, with my window halfway down so as not to get a contact drunk. Believe me, I've seen my brother drunk many times, but him going all out tonight was quite apparent. It wasn't long before I came across the T-section again and took a left. My brother made a joke about me having to not take the main road and how this is probably the first time I've seen a new road in years. I would have made a joke back, but I knew he was right. A couple of miles in, I start noticing the shadows again. Brushing it off as nothing was my plan, but then my brother spoke up. "Does something seem off to you?" he said. I was a bit taken aback. Wondering if he was noticing the same thing I was, I responded with, "What do you mean?" He sat up a bit, surveying the shadows above us as he leaned forward. Maybe I've had too much to drink. At this point, my curiosity piqued. "Now, come on, what's on your mind, bro?" "I don't know. These shadows just seem off to me." My suspicion was correct. It couldn't be a coincidence that we both noticed the same thing. He started shuffling around, looking more and more uneasy. "We should turn around," he said. This was an odd request. I mean, I'm sure there are many other routes we could take. At this point, though, we were about 5 miles into the stretch. It seemed like a waste of time to do so. Odd shadows can't hurt us, right? He started to open his mouth again when his eyes widened and he yelled, "Stop!" I didn't hesitate. I hit the brakes as hard as I could without losing control. "What? What happened?" I asked. "There's something in front of us." I looked ahead and couldn't see anything past the gravel cloud. We sat and waited for it to clear, my heart beating faster and faster with each passing second. Just as it seemed though it would totally dissipate, something happened that I will forever have nightmares about. A face, about 2 feet long and 2 feet wide, slammed into the windshield with so much force it caused the windshield to start to crack. The face seemed to be made of shadows, as if it jumped off the ground and formed before us. There was no hesitation between me seeing this and shoving the shift into reverse and punching the gas. As we were backing up at speeds too fast to truly control, the shadows started seeping in through the cracks. We were both panicking as my brother took off his shirt and began pushing it against the cracks. How he made this quick decision whilst being wasted still puzzles me, but maybe the adrenaline made him sober up fast. I started to slow down so I could, as safely as possible, turn around. I whipped the wheel to the left and threw the car into a 90-degree angle, kicking up more gravel clouds as I did so. I went to shove the shift into drive when I realised my car had stalled out. Turning the key over and over again, I was looking around for where this creature was. Then, I saw it. Through my open window, about 10 feet away, inching closer and closer with a grin that told me it knew it had us trapped. I took my hand off the key to reach for my window scroll to close it. Say what you will about this cheap design, but if I hadn't had it in that moment, I may not be typing this out right now. The creature, noticing that the window was going up, moved with much more haste, closing a split second before the creature got to it. This seemed to anger it. It began screaming in a high-pitched wail that deafened me for a few seconds. Whilst all of this was happening, my brother had the mental capacity to keep trying to start the car. Noticing that it was still in drive, I pushed it into park. He turned it one more time, and the car started. Putting it back into drive, I took off once again in the opposite direction. We drove at speeds way too fast as we heard the stomping of this beast trying to keep up. It wasn't long before we reached the T section again, and I took a right turn going as fast as I felt I could control. Knowing we weren't out of the woods yet, I stayed on it until we reached the city once more. Finally, hopefully, in safe territory. We parked on the main street to catch our breath. My brother apologized profusely for making me come get him. It wasn't his fault. How could either of us have known something like this could happen? How could anybody? Luckily, there were many more routes to take home, and he knew them well. We took the one with the least amount of trees and made it home safe and sound. It's been a couple of years since then. My brother and I don't talk about it, but we always advise people to stay off that road any time it is mentioned. He's quit drinking. Actually, I don't think he's had a sip since that night. I'm still a shut-in, but I do now have my own apartment in the aforementioned city. I work an office job there, and though it's nothing special, it works for now. That night left many scars on me. Every time I see a shadow, I wonder if it has come back for me. I've come to the conclusion that as long as I stay off that road, I should be safe. There have been a few disappearances in the area over the last year or so, and I think it is directly linked. As for Wendigos and other things of the like, I now believe they could be out there. I still don't know what that creature was. A demon, a superpowered shadow person, perhaps something else. It's tough to say. All I know is it doesn't hurt to keep your guard up. Most importantly, it doesn't hurt to stay off less travelled roads. What bothers me more than anything is not knowing if the shadows in the corner of my room at night are just shadows, or perhaps something more malevolent waiting for its opportunity to strike once again. Thank you for watching and/or listening to this video. Again, if you enjoyed my narration, please hit the like button, and if you don't already, go ahead and subscribe to my channel. Let me know what you thought of these stories in the comments section below, and check out the links to the original posts in the video description. If you have a story you would like me to narrate on this channel, please email me at mrsinisterstories@gmail.com. To support my channel even further, take a look at my Teespring store in the links below. I have a number of t-shirt and hoodie designs with my new logo on. also a face mask with just the generic text Mr. Sinister. Thanks again for watching.